Praise the Lord. This is our first Bible study. In the next few days, we'll focus on the book of Philippians, after which we'll then study a book in Old Testament and so forth and so on. Always feel free to comment your thoughts on the study in the comment section. In this video, we are studying the book of Philippians with a focus on chapter 1. Verses 1 and verses 2 of this segment, we find Paul commencing his letter by extending greetings to the church, all the believers in Philippi. As we will discover, the Philippian church held a special place in the heart of the apostle, likely due to the significant support they provided him towards spreading the message of Christ to other regions. In verses 3 to verses 11, Apostle Paul expresses his gratitude for the believers in Philippi, affirming that he regularly remembers them in his prayers. The subsequent verses also reveal a deep bond between Paul and the Philippian believers, rooted in their shared commitment towards advancing his mission. From this, we can draw a fact that supporting Christian missionaries is of paramount significance in the kingdom, since it enhances the continuity of gospel of Christ and also enhances the bond between believers. In verses 6, we see Paul asserting his confidence that God will bring to completion the work he has begun working in Christians in Philippi. Often at times when believers encounter circumstances that are discouraging, such as persecutions and trials, which often leave numerous in doubt on God and even their salvation journey. It is imperative for every believer to cultivate an assurance in God's ability to fulfill His purpose and plans in their lives, as we have seen Paul reminding the Christians in Philippi in verses 6. Despite facing trials and doubts along their spiritual journey, believers should draw strength from Paul's confidence and God's promise to remain steadfast by their side. Remember, God has said that He will never leave nor forsake those that are His, or the chosen, or believers in this case. Paul also offers a prayer that the love among believers persists amidst the challenges of the world, leading them to remain blameless and filled with the fruits of righteousness until the return of Christ. This underscores the importance of believers maintaining an unwavering commitment, sincerity, and love for Christ despite the adversities they encounter in the present day life. In verses 12 to verses 17, we see Paul reflecting on how his sufferings have contributed to the advancement of the gospel of Christ. Despite facing persecution, Paul observes that his trials have inspired others to preach the gospel, even if some do it with dishonest motives. As Paul points out, the gospel of Christ continued, however, the motives of the preachers or the motives of those that were preaching were. Even in the modern day, the spread of the gospel of Christ is often met with varying responses. Some of the responses that preachers in the modern day encounter include acceptance, rejection, and exploitation for personal gain. Yet, regardless of such circumstances, God's purpose will always prevail, as He has stated in Isaiah 55 and verses 11. In verses 18 to verses 30, we see Paul's steadfast commitment to proclaiming Christ for as long as he lives in his earthly body being more clear. He also urges believers to remain firm in their faith, serving as ambassadors of Christ, that is, preaching the gospel of Christ, whether he is present with them, that is, whether Paul was present with them, or that is in Philippi, or not with them in Philippi, and irrespective of the experiences of suffering that they encountered. So, as we draw close to the end of this chapter, we see Paul putting forth what appears like a challenge to believers, where we see believers being challenged to consider enduring suffering for the sake of the gospel, while also embracing its transformative power and blessings. Typically, what this outlines or highlights is that as much as there is power in gospel, and at the same time there are blessings that follow that, at the same time Christians or believers should be ready to also endure any kind of suffering that they might encounter while leading their spiritual life or while preaching the gospel of Christ. However, we have to mention that this requires a steadfast dedication to Christ, regardless of the trials and tribulations that the believers may face. As Paul has exemplified in his letter to the Philippians, it is important for believers, that is, you and me, to have unwavering faith and commitment, which will be paramount in helping us to navigate the spiritual journey. Thank you for watching. Let us meet in the next Bible study.